Trends podcast, where we discuss the latest manufacturing, technology, research, and news. Today's episode is sponsored by MFG 2024 Conference. I am Ramia Lloyd, and I'm here with...
I'm Elissa Davis.
Steve Lamarca.
And I am a shivering Benjamin Moses. Today was cold.
It was
freezing
so
outside.
cold outside.
It's supposed to snow again tomorrow.
Yeah.
More snow.
Steve can't relate.
So, okay, I can. Because every time I get up or I'm about to head out the door, the first thing I do before I actually start my car and get in it is I take Charlie out, make sure he uses the bathroom because he can't use a conventional bathroom. So I was walking out, walking him around the neighborhood like this.
Which is T-shirts and jeans.
T-shirt and jeans
Yep.
with all-bird slippers. And and this is fine. I spent 7 years in Vermont. What is it? It's... 34
26
degrees right now. This is T-shirt and shorts weather.
Now it is. This morning was 14 degrees.
It may have been 22 when I was outside. But it was whatever. It's we're not going to be out long. He just got to pee and then we'll go back in. And I was stopped by 3 or 4 of my neighbors. I was like, now it's getting cold.
Yep.
If we were all minding our own business and carrying on with our day and being productive, I wouldn't be cold. I would be kept warm. Maybe I'm just kept warm by a good circulatory system and anger.
Ramia, speaking of warm, I know you like our studio.
It's so nice. Guys, we took so much time, and it looks so good. Our beautiful videographer, Michael Mark, took a lot of time, and we bought a lot of equipment for this, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I really like.
Big lights.
Yeah, can you see
We've
we're
got
so
some
well
good
lit.
lights.
Yeah, we're
I look
looking
good on
so
camera for once.
professional.
Yeah.
Oh, please.
We all look beautiful. It's fantastic. More things to come,
Yep.
friends.
And we're in a whole new setup this time. We've literally pivoted.
I feel like we're
going
gonna
to
just change it each episode until we find something that sticks, and we're like, done.
This is
Lock
it.
it
I
in.
mean, yeah,
Elissa,
yeah.
Winter Economic Forum. I
Yes.
hear good things.
Yes. So the Winter Economic Forum, it's basically like the baby sister of MT Forecast.
Sure.
And so it'll be in Cincinnati on the 26th of January. And it's free. So if people want to do it, they should sign up for it.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug, because this is my first time helping to actually run an event, having a hand in actually putting this all together. I'm going to have to work with the AV team when I get there and do the run of show. I've never done that before and I'm very nervous. But it's okay. It'll all work out. But so far we've got a great turnout registered so far, which is great considering it's January in Cincinnati. So hopefully people will actually be willing to drive in the cold to come see us. But it's great. I mean, it's got all the economic updates since MT Forecast in October, plus what to expect for 2024. We're going to have a panel. There's going to be a few different presentations. And then if you're there in person in Cincinnati, you get a free breakfast.
Ooh, that's handy.
Yeah. So breakfast does start at 7 a.m., which I'm not totally thrilled about, but it's fine because
It's free.
It's free. It's free. Exactly.
free,
It's
it's
the same
me.
reason I get up early for continental breakfast.
The
when I'm on
cost is
vacation.
wake up.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of reasons I like the timing of this event because Empty Forecast was October last year,
Mm-hmm.
and when they talked about the forecast then and what we're seeing now, there's a lot of volatility.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think now getting good information of what people should do because there's a lot of talk about the cost of money and potentially trying to do investments this year versus if you spend money end of next year, I think there could be some problems. So I think this is really good timing to see where a company should be investing on.
Well, and it's interesting because what we've seen in the last couple of years is that with economists, they're giving it their all to try and predict it, but we just keep doing something completely different.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to kind of get their 2 cents and then see okay, well, what's going to happen? My boss Chris Downs, he used to work in SA and he did a lot of stat stuff and number stuff and he runs MT Forecast. So he's holding he's my training wheels on this. He's definitely kind of picking up a lot of the slack, but yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a great event and everyone if you can go, if you're local in Cincinnati or near Cincinnati, you should definitely go. If not, you can register online. It'll be an online webinar as well. And if you do it online, you get to start at 8 a.m. not 7.
Oh.
So
You missed out breakfast though.
you can have a nice breakfast in your warm home while I'm getting up at 5:30 a.m. to get ready. So
So speaking of
Enjoy
events,
it.
I was down in Orlando this past week for
Much
the A3
warmer.
Business Forum. A little bit, yeah.
Much
yeah.
warmer, yeah.
I'm not complaining about the weather. And it was a good event. So we had our automation and manufacturing committee down there because a lot of those guys do attend this event also, which worked out great. That was a great committee meeting. We're looking at restructuring to figure out what the deliverables are back to AMT. And that'll occur throughout this year. But the business forum had some really interesting content when they kicked off a kind of informal keynote on the Tuesday night with a guy that talked about innovation and creativity and kind of releasing boundaries. It was an interesting contest because he's a online creator, he's a big TikTok following, and he talked about the risk and getting over the nerves of just starting a TikTok. He was nervous about just posting it and making time for it, which sounds silly because you're just talking about TikTok, but the overcoming the fear of starting a project was his main message, and how you can enable your team to be more productive. And he had a very interesting story about writing kids books and writing. He had a very fun, interesting, I wouldn't say product, but thing where he was jealous of people who ran marathons. He had a friend who ran a bunch of marathons. He was like, I should make a fake marathon. People people shouldn't be disregarded for not running marathons. So he had this whole Kickstarter about starting a fake marathon that you sign up and they send you a medal, they send you like a bib, you take pictures, you post them online that you pretended to run a marathon.
Oh my gosh.
And it kept escalating year over year. So that was a pretty fun way to start off the event. Then we talked about some needs and challenges. And one of the things that he talked about was cybersecurity. And they brought in the gentleman that the story Catch Me If You Can was based off of.
Oh my
No
god.
way. He was
I
there.
love
He was
that
there,
guy.
and he was fantastic. So that was a wonderful. And for us, it's interesting because I think it's the way we talk about cybersecurity. Not a lot of people want to hear about it, but the importance and I think the way we talk about it can change over time.
It's also wild because the Catch Me If You Can guy, that was like in the 60s, 70s.
The guy's not young.
Yeah, and so the fact that he's still an expert in cybersecurity says that you can do it. You can become an expert in cybersecurity.
Windows update.
And then we ended the night, the last session on Wednesday, with a panel discussion, and they brought in some from 3M, some from UPS, but also they brought in some from the Mayo Clinic. That was interesting.
Oh God, Mayo Clinic.
Got to the Mayo Clinic.
Did you have an itch on your hand and they told you you're dying?
So you would ask, what are they automating? And it's a full spectrum from automating lab testing. They mentioned they got 40,000 lab samples last year. How do you handle all that? To obviously the robotic arm for robotic surgery, like the Da Vinci and stuff like that, but also autonomous machines as delivery and logistics. So instead of having a human take medicine to the room or food or things like that, have a robot do that, which we're seeing in hospitals. But the main goal was to improve human-to-human collaboration and connectivity. So if you take away some of the other tasks where there isn't much human-to-human collaboration to a robot and allow the staff to work more with the patients and improve that user experience, that's kind of what they're interested in. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
It's interesting, and I will say, as someone who works in social media, the guy with TikTok, there's a lot more involved in posting on social media than people realize, and I think that's, I've been preparing for the workshop, and I've been, I was researching a quote, and I found this really good one. It's you need to surround yourself with people who understand that it's a lot.
There's work.
Yeah, if you want quality content, it takes a village.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I appreciate that, but TikTok is a whole other beast. That's
So Ramia, can you tell us about MFG 2024?
Manufacturing continues to grow at a rapid rate. Stay ahead of the curve at the MFG meeting in this April. The MFG meeting is the ultimate gathering of manufacturing technology minds, bringing together a community of solutions and solvers. Learn how to keep pace with growing demand, make lifelong connections, and see what opportunities lie on the horizon. Go to amtonline.org/events to register.
Thanks, Ramia.
Thanks, Ramia.
You're very welcome, friends.
Guys,
Tell me.
MMS, Modern Machine Shop. Have you guys been following them lately?
Sure.
through you, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm just saying they've been releasing some bangers as of late. They are like the Taylor Swift of manufacturing, and I have a handful of articles here. One that I wanted to talk about for our last episode that's still relevant today. But just to prove a point, I brought the receipts of the past 3 articles going back to November, and they write a lot more that are really great. I actually have an article I think from 2007, and I reached out to the guy who wrote it for Modern Machine Shop, his name's escaping me right now, and just connected with him. He no longer works there, but he wrote an article about watchmaking and its connection with manufacturing and metal cutting and tooling. It was really awesome. But they've got some new bangers as of late, and the one that I wanted to talk about our last episode was an OEM. They had an article on an OEM moving from 5-axis machining to 3-axis machining in the name of improved rigidity. So when you have let's think about, like, you know, a more popular topic like additive. One of the big things that sells additive, at least you would hope, would sells additive all over the place is the complexity of the parts that you can make, the complexity of the designs, just the complex geometries of your parts. The same sales pitch 20, 30 years ago for a different technology was 5-axis milling and machining. This article is interesting because it's basically laying out the applications that this one OEM wanted to, these targets that they wanted to hit that were possible with 5-axis, but it would those 2 extra axes as opposed to 3 axes were hurdles that they had to jump over and slowed them down. Not necessarily roadblocks. It was still more capability, but that the machines offer. But there's more time in setup, more time with the design and the CAM process.
Yep.
And more time in those processes means the more likely something is going to go wrong or a part is going to be out of spec. So there's going to be a lot more iterations with your design. If you just limit it to an XYZ 3-axis system and you just get your fixturing perfect, because at least in my case, I'm very guilty of doing 3-axis operations on a 5-axis machine tool known as 3+2. Those extra 2 axes are sometimes, at least for me, most of the time, they're only useful for fixturing sake, so I don't have to refixture stuff, because that's one beauty of, but because you're adding 2 more variables of flexibility to your process, you're also introducing 2 more variables of uncertainty now.
Yeah. And that is an interesting trade-off, because if you look at the capability, so 5-axis, right? So theoretically, to your point of you don't have to change your fixtures, you can machine almost every feature that you need, but also simple stuff like deburring or breaking an edge, so you don't have post-machining ups. That has been incorporated in 5-axis, but the capability of that versus the rigidity, and that's an interesting point when you get into like some difficult metals like super alloys and materials that are very difficult, or I don't probably need to dive into a bit more about the tolerance difference between the 2, but
absolutely.
I do see that, and that is a very interesting, because up until now, we've always talked about, hey, you should probably be shifting from 3-axis to 5-axis, but there is a unique scenario of 3-axis is super rigid.
Yes. Well, I mean, any old timer you can talk to will if you talk about firearms or automobiles, will be like, less moving parts is more reliable, and you want reliability to get your money's worth, don't you? It's like, that's absolutely true. It's probably a more reliable system, but also, like, when in terms of the programming alone, those extra 2 axes, your A and B axes, those are rotary axes.
Right.
It's a lot harder math. Those are at least 2 levels more of math that you're having to figure out in your head.
But
sure, there's software for that, but
the additional work you have to do for other setups, because now you have to take it out, put in a different fixture, right? So I completely agree. Like the complexity versus the number of programs you have to make, and it's definitely give and take.
But these are just really fun, some really great articles that I threw together that Modern Machine Shop. The next one being a shop reclaims 10,000 square feet of floor space by implementing a VLM system, a vertical lift module system. So basically, instead of having scattered tool chests everywhere, little tool vending machines from like MSC or Granger or Productivity Inc., for example. I don't know if they do any of that. They might. We should find out. They're a member. Instead, this one shop is implementing a massive vertical lift module, which I've never seen one. At least I've never really taken a good look at one in person before, but imagine an even bigger vending machine, like Carvana's car vending machine. It's like that, just for moving tools around, and just building upward instead of having tool chest upon tool chest only at human height. They saved a lot of space, and when you save space, you have more room for more new machine tools.
I mean, not only
which make our members happy.
So we also experimented with that in my previous facility, and we saw some demos, and it is massive. So the one we had was 3 stories tall, and 20, 30 foot wide.
Right.
And it had to be big enough because we're doing welding fixtures. So some of the welding fixtures are 6 feet long, and they're heavy. Previously, what we have to do is they'll be on these metal racks. So if you wanted the one on the very top, you lifted up the little pallet jack, had a human slide it in.
Oh, with a pallet jack?
Yeah.
Oh, you had to use tools to get your tools?
Exactly. And you got to wheel it over. So, the inventory management of our tooling and fixtures was a little bit tough because tooling and fixture work holding can be heavy.
Yeah.
So now that's in a machine that brings it up to the right height. It can push it out to you, and then you just slide over to your cart. There's a lot more advantage than not just freeing up space, right? So when you do check it out, then your management system of your tools knows it's gone, knows you've issued it out. So there's a lot of intangibles that come with a system like that.
And I'm sure there's software to throw alerts or at least change the color of the stack light to let you know, hey, somebody didn't put this tool back, at least if in the case of like a hand tool. The other article that I really like, we spoke about in another in a previous episode, was the European company that's using audio science technique to minimize the noise floor, but apply it to machining surface finish. That was a fun one. Go back to that episode.
Episode 109. You can find it on the
Look
website
at
or on our
you
YouTube.
knowing the episode numbers.
Shameless plug.
And then another one that that Elissa will definitely know about that I don't think we talked about. I think I threw it in a tech report, but Modern Machine Shop wrote about the resurgence of shop class in American high schools.
That's cool.
Let's talk shop class. You guys are all lucky, apparently.
I was going to say the lack of shop class and something.
The lack of shop class. So in middle school and the 1 year of public high school that I went to before my parents sent me to military school, I wasn't fancy. I just liked playing video games. My grades dropped. They sent me to military school for that reason. Neighboring dorm people were pulled off the street drug dealers. Jeez. Me and my roommate just played a lot of video games.
Shop class, Steve.
But
Shop class.
I got no shop class because growing up in Northern Virginia with all the other yuppie kids, their parents would call the registration office of the local high school or middle school and be like, my kid needs to be in this class. My parents were like, no, you want to go into a class, you sign up for it, and if you're too late and other people booted you out so they could be in there, that's on you. Life's rough.
So
you're not going to have your parents forever.
I actually took shop class twice, and it's because I started middle school in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and because here middle school is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, right? And then I moved to Washington State, where middle school is 7th and 8th grade.
Yep.
So I took it once in 6th grade, then I ended up taking it again in the 8th grade because it was technically 2 separate middle school curriculums.
Yep.
So I did get a lot of. I didn't make really cool stuff my first one. All I made was a pumpkin shaped napkin holder, which was just a piece of wood in between 2 pumpkins. But in my shop class in Washington State, actually, I made a biplane.
Ooh.
There was a bunch of different pieces and stuff, and we tried making puzzles, but I was really bad at that, so I stayed away from that.
Wow.
But the biplane was the coolest thing I made. But you guys made way cooler stuff based on what you were saying.
Wait, what did they make?
I made this it was like a board game, but used a washer, and you had to put little pegs in it, and you could design it however you want. And I designed mine like Mickey Mouse because I was in 7th grade. But greatest thing I've ever done.
And what did Ben do? What did you do?
I did 2 things. When we had a mousetrap car, so you put a mousetrap in between 2 axles and then run a string connected to the axle and the mousetrap. So as it released, it's rotating the axle. So we had a competition to see whose mousetrap car was the fastest.
Gotcha.
Did you win?
No, of course I didn't. I kept losing traction, so I put rubber bands on it, but wheel sizes, tons of experiments.
I will say, when I was a kid, I think I proposed my argument that I just spouted out here to my parents, and they sent me to a summer camp where I got to build a CO2 race car.
Yeah, we did
That's
that.
cool.
That was tight. There's a little CO2 cartridge. They put it in the back, and they spank it on its butt, and the thing opens, and it goes...
Yep.
Okay.
It was really cool. But we got to carve the thing out of wood, and everybody laughed at me because I had no concept of how to use these power tools,
Yep.
and my thing did not look aerodynamic at all. I was like, it's when I was a kid, man.
Kids
My
are
favorite part was
mean.
the sanding. It was so soothing to sand stuff down.
But I did take home economics, and I learned how to make some slapper pancakes.
Also very important. I
Very.
think that's also something they should bring back to schools because my siblings have zero basic cooking skills.
These kids today need to learn how to season a cast iron pan.
Is that what happened in your home ec class?
No, we,
Okay.
I wish we did that.
was like,
that would be
that's
that would be like a
advanced.
capstone class,
Yeah,
actually.
no, that's
Well,
advanced.
you know, like my brother was asking me something, and I was like, all you need to know is like the basics of how to sew. He's like, I don't know how to use a sewing machine, and I was like, that's fine. You just need to know how to like sew by hand. He goes, I don't.
Yeah.
And I was like, you
don't.
It's very simple,
It is.
but like it's a skill. Like if you're not taught, it's really not something you like pick up in life.
I lost it.
Oh,
I
to
used to
sew?
know how, but now
I can teach
lost
you. I
it.
do a lot of cross stitch and needlepoint, but
My wife is really good.
I'm
Hey.
sure. And that sounded sarcastic. I meant it 100%. I'm
Yeah, it
sure
did.
she's very good at it.
I'm
I'm
sure.
sorry. That's just how my voice sounds. No, I was trying to transition to my article
It's okay,
about
Melissa
STEM.
doesn't listen to this.
Anyway, so yeah, transitioning to my article, which kind of comes into that, is it's about STEM. So my article it's an opinion piece from The Hill, and it's about. The title of the article is "The U.S. prevailed in the space race of the 1960s with STEM, so can we win the Earth race too?" Did anyone here ever read the book or watch the movie October Sky? The movie had Jake Gyllenhaal in it.
Oh.
No.
Yeah. It's about this kid in West Virginia who basically like learned during the 1950s and 60s, and he learns like how to make like small rockets.
I really wanted to see that movie.
It's a really good movie. I also recommend the book. It's great, but that's always what I think about when I think about the space race, because like these kids were being taught how to make these rockets and in school, and then like he brought it as like a science fair project, and then as he got older, like NASA like kept their eye on him and then eventually recruited him out of college.
Wow.
Cool.
So
Must be nice to be recruited.
right by NASA.
Jeez.
But this article basically says that, you know, we won the space race, which is great. You know, that's awesome. But there's so many things on Earth with climate change
Yep.
that need to be fixed. And so a big way that we can make a change with that is investing in the right places in STEM. And so, I mean, I obviously there's always lots of funding going to STEM, but I think it's a question of, is the funding being used properly? Are we recruiting the right people?
Right.
Like, is there a way to like get people to stay in STEM? Because I know while I was looking for articles for this episode, I found another article that said women in STEM receive like, I think it was like 37% more discrimination than women
bet.
in other fields.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so from the get-go, women are basically already being told they shouldn't go into STEM, and then when they get into it, they're still being pushed out of it.
I mean, one of my favorites space race movies is Hidden Figures.
Yeah, that's a good
There-
one.
there's
Yeah.
Love that movie.
evidence right there.
The story about John Glenn is true, though. He would not go up into space unless Taraji P. Henson's character, what's her name?
I remember.
Catherine
remember.
Howard?
She
Is that her
validated,
name?
yes,
Yeah. She had to check. He had her check the figures by hand. That he wouldn't go up unless it wasn't like last minute like it was in the movie. But he did have her check the
That's
figures
awesome.
by hand because he trusted her.
And I think that's one hidden gem about STEM. Like as we're talking about shop class, and Steve didn't attend shop class, there's a value that you get fundamental skills that are not just applicable in STEM, but if you go into another field, you know how to solve problems, right?
Yeah.
You know how to get through life, and I think applying those skills into any other field, like if you go into nursing, I mean, having hands-on capabilities and skills is valuable in every field that you go into. So I think
Is that a hidden gem?
Her
Or
name
a
was-
hidden STEM.
Or a hidden figure.
We got the title. We got the title for this episode.
Her name was Catherine G. Johnson.
Thank
Nice.
you.
You're very welcome.
Catherine Howard was the name of one of Henry VIII's wives. Catherine Johnson.
Yeah, okay.
The other fun thing that I just want to interject about NASA is, don't feel bad about the recruiting thing. when I graduated from college with my little bachelor's degree in physics, one of my neighbors who lived across the street from my parents' house worked at the Goddard Space Center, which is just up in Maryland from here, and like one of my other neighbors told me about this, so I wrote her a really nice letter and be like, "Hey, I'd love to work at Goddard Space Center." And she wrote a really nice letter back that was basically, "Oh honey, no." oh honey, like you don't apply. You don't reach out to NASA.
Yeah.
NASA finds you.
Yeah.
Like
that's fun.
Yeah.
it was real heartbreak.
Well, It's also, I mean, it was also different like in the 50s and 60s, and we were desperately trying to beat out the Soviets to get to the moon. They were like, we need the smartest people. And like I said, they started like getting ready to recruit him, and he was like in high school.
What was
like,
the Carl Sagan backup project that the U.S. had? Their plan B was, if the Russians beat us to the moon, we're gonna nuke the moon. If they're gonna beat us to the moon, nobody's gonna beat us to the moon.
So I've got an article on robots.
This is a real thing. It's like Project A19 or something.
I believe it.
So I've got, the title is Toyota, Ready Robotics, NVIDIA team up to redefine robotic programming. This is going to end super nerdy. This is the last article. But
I'm ready.
so the concept is they're worried about programming robots on the floor. Like in this specific scenario, they're actually moving hot forgings. So it's very dangerous, very large pieces of metal that they're moving around. And the concept that they're looking at is using simulations to program offline and get to a accurate program for the robots that they can implement very quickly too. So instead of iterating on the floor, they can iterate in simulations using. And they have a couple of interesting tools. So NVIDIA has Isaac, their simulator. They use Forge OS. And now that they have the simulation, and now that they're using Forge OS to get data off that cell, now they're able to create the digital twin, right? So they're getting real-time data of the cell itself. And that's where they're bringing into the Omniverse. These are all interesting buzzwords, but in the end, they're getting to a faster, safer program, and they're able to monitor the process for future iterations. So I really like the closed loop scenario of this where, we design something, but does it work? Is it working? Is it in a safe environment? So I thought it was a fairly interesting article from Interesting Engineering.
I think like simulation, like software and like practice in that is becoming more and more. I mean, I saw a lot of it when I was at South Tech last year.
Yep.
That was like a majority of what I saw was like simulation software.
Yeah.
And using NVIDIA, I mean, they're able to apply physics to the simulations too. So it's not just moving stuff around. Does it kinematically move? Yes, but
it's a practical simulation.
Exactly.
They have a leather jacket and a very nice kitchen too.
So you want to talk about NVIDIA CEO?
NVIDIA's CEO.
Like a robot in a leather
So,
jacket.
a couple of years back when they announced the RTX 30 series, I can't believe it's a couple of years now. It feels like it was yesterday because they're now on the RTX 40, and I'm pretty sure they're about to announce like an RTX 50 series. But their CEO during the RTX 30 series release was just like hanging out in his kitchen when they had the cameras, and he was wearing his leather jacket that he wears everywhere, and like this immaculate kitchen that like you'd think that the Michelin star chefs in like Las Vegas, if there's any place in Las Vegas that has a Michelin star,
Gordon Ramsay restaurants. Wolfgang.
perfect. I'm sure one of those restaurants has a kitchen that looks like this, like marble. It looks like something out of like the Venetian or Bellagio.
Yeah.
It was gorgeous, and he was pulling like out of his Viking oven like the next graphics card. It was just like, we get it. You guys are like the best in GPU technology. But I actually saw him. I'm gonna be nicer to NVIDIA.
Okay.
Maybe I shouldn't, but I'm just gonna explain why. I saw this morning actually on LinkedIn a like quick minute and a half segment from a snip from a interview with the CEO of NVIDIA, and the guy asks a brilliant interview question. He says to the CEO of NVIDIA, you're going to breakfast or lunch, you're just going out to eat, sit down at a restaurant with your two best friends and the two smartest people you know. And the reason why you've all got together at this restaurant was to discuss a new company that you were gonna start and build. How does that conversation go? And he immediately, without even thinking about it, answers with, "It doesn't." I'm never starting another company again.
Wow.
It's. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad I did the whole NVIDIA thing, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of heartbreak. And I've never seen it in any video with the NVIDIA's CEO. I've never seen him like down like that. Yeah. And you could see in this interview that he's lost some people. Like not death-wise, but like he's broken some hearts. Some people have broken his heart.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he's given a lot of time in his life. He acts like a young guy because he probably still thinks he's young. Like, so much of his time disappeared trying to make that company successful.
Yep.
And, you know, his efforts were very fruitful.
Sure.
But still, like, there was some heartbreak in that guy's eyes.
And I think that is an interesting lesson learned through Jensen as opposed to going through yourself, because that is a hard takeaway. I mean, the more we get involved with startups, the more I see these guys around. It's like, how much time are you investing? I mean, just in travel and the meetings that we're happen to cross paths with, there's a ton of investment in terms of time. And I think that is one.
Have you been to one of your kids' ball sports games?
I want to buy Jensen's jacket someday.
Dude, imagine
That specific jacket.
Imagine what that's
We
going to
should all
go
get
for
one.
in the future.
He should have a clothing line.
I don't know if you should have a clothing line,
Oh,
but
no.
A
like,
partnership with a clothing line. That's what.
but
he
like
should do.
years
Put
from
his name
now,
on it.
assuming Jensen's gone,
Sure.
like that jacket pops up at like a Christie's or a Sotheby's auction, and they're like $17 trillion for his leather jacket because money's going to be nothing in the future.
Yeah.
The cost of cost. What did you mention earlier talking about economics? The cost of money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much money for money? That's the craziest thing I've heard.
Money's so expensive.
Ramia, where can we find Jensen's jacket?
amtonline.org/resources. Like, share, subscribe.
Bing bong.